All right, so now that all of the drip marketing is done for what I'm assuming is 3.0, we can finally talk about it, which will be true form Herta, or like Herta's true form, whatever. And then we have HMC Remembrance, I believe is the one that just came out. And then we have baby girl Aglaea, which you can't tell me I'm wrong because Hassan told me I'm right. No, I didn't just make that up. Anyhow, so while we're going over things, basically what I'm gonna give you guys is the TLDR first, and then I'll break down each and every one of them. Too long didn't read, you guys are cucked. If you're a free-to-play player, you might be in some big trouble. If you are a low spender, a dolphin, be a whale, you don't really have to worry about a lot of things, but for the most part, my free-to-play players, you guys are dependent, and I mean dependent, on Super Break. You guys are super into the Super Break meta, Firefly, you push the agenda, everything like that. And the problem with that is HMC is one character, not multiple characters, which now forces you into a predicament that most Firefly players have not had to deal with since the release of Firefly. And what I mean by that is, ever since Firefly came out, she's had one static team. That one static team being May, Firefly, HMC, and then Gallagher. And this is, of course, like the most free-to-play variant that you could get. If you don't have May, you could replace that with Asta, but it doesn't do the same thing. It kind of works, but it's not the same. Because a lot of the players who predominantly play Firefly don't have to do anything, that puts them in a situation where they can pull for other things, or essentially don't have to invest into another team archetype or a team comp or new members on the Firefly team or Super Break altogether. What that turns into is you are now glued to this team. And it's a big reason why anytime I talk about Firefly, for someone that loves the Gundam version of Firefly, right? She only has that team. Like she doesn't have a lot of variety. When I talk about Boot Hill, when I talk about Rappa or any other Super Break character, I always mention how much more variety they have compared to a Firefly team. And let me make this clear. When I talk about a team and like the variety they have, it's not, hey, you can use this thing and it might work. It's what is equivalent to whatever it is that you're using and then some. In Firefly's case or in Acheron's case, right? I'm not going to give you a team recommendation that isn't as strong as the normal team that people would talk about. So when we talk about Firefly and we talk about the normal Firefly team, I'm not going to give you a recommendation of a bunch of characters to just put on the team and it kind of works, because that doesn't really do you any good. Moving forward, let's break down the pros and the cons between each of these characters, what I'm excited about, what they possibly mean for the meta coming forward, and why I'm pulling Aglaea, because Greek goddesses. First up, we can talk about Herta. Well, the Herta, I believe, is going to be her name. Why they call, I guess she's super important. Knowing Herta, she probably calls herself that, and then she just forces everybody else to do the same thing. Anyhow, Herta's whole thing is ice and the fact that she's erudition. Now, two things are important here. One, erudition has had a nice come up as of late. We've seen it with Rappa. You guys have been hearing me talk about Himiko and a couple other different characters. Jade, even Jade is bringing up a nice little resurgence. Haha, get what I just did there. Anyway, Jade is bringing up a nice little resurgence with her own character, to the point where some players are even considering pulling Jade once her rerun comes along. So Herta being erudition, normally we look at erudition as a bad thing, but right now it's looked at as a pretty good thing. One of the key things that I want to talk about with Herta, and yes, I did the key because Keyblade, but the key thing that I'm talking about with Herta, I don't know what she's gonna do. Like, the normal Herta has a follow-up attack mechanic, and this Herta does not look like she has anything to summon, unless, like, if I'm looking at the picture that is provided to us, I see that there's some cats right up here, right? A black cat here, and then it will actually one black cat, because if you look at it closely, it's going through the keyhole and coming out of the other side of the keyhole. Maybe Herta is a summon character, we just don't know that yet, but I don't think so. I feel like the base form of her, the puppet form, being follow-up centric, it's safe to assume that this one is also going to be some type of follow-up centric, hitting everybody on the field, things like that, which is pretty cool. The biggest thing though is ice. We haven't had a ice DPS character or a main DPS ice character since Jingliu. Jingliu isn't falling off, but the game has gotten to a point where she just can't keep up. I guess you could say it's still falling off. I don't really care what term you use. It doesn't really matter. Point being is that Jingliu is not pulling in her weight right now. She needs more. She needs E2 Sparkle. She needs an E2 Bronya. She needs E1 May, you know, doubling up on her damage. She needs E1 or E2 versions of herself. Whatever the case may be, Jingliu needs a lot more in order to keep up with the current day game, even against ice weak enemies. So Herta coming into the game could present a good thing for a lot of players who want a ice DPS character. And the fact that she's erudition means that she can hit everybody on the field all at once. Whether or not her kid's gonna be good, I genuinely don't know, bro. However, I can say that this is probably the lowest lowest of your pools that you should be worried about, like pool value wise. I think Herta is probably going to be the lowest. And again, this is just me speculating. Once we see her kit, my opinion might completely change, and I might tell you she's closer to a must pull. But as of right now, being bundled with all the characters that we have, you also have to consider that we have Sunday. Literally, Sunday comes out in like 7 days or 5 days, whatever it is, like next week. All right, next week, Sunday's getting here. After that, we get Fugue. Then you have Herta, you have Aglaea, you have Remembrance HMC coming bundled in with that as well. Whenever he decides to show up, I don't know if we're gonna get him at the beginning or the end or the middle of the patch, whatever. Point being is that you're bundled with 5 different characters that you have to kind of mess around with and choose from. Not so much pulling wise, but what you're gonna invest into, because 3.0 is jumping into, as we can see, and we can just straight up talk about her now. Let me go to baby girl. I guess she's not really a baby girl. She's more like mom, like queen, goddess. I don't know what she wants me to call her yet, but I'll find out. Anyway, we have Aglaea, and Aglaea is basically she's a brand new path. Remembrance, she's lightning. This is not only competition from Erudition side, being genuine, as well as Serval, because Serval is still, she's all right? You can use her if you got her, but it's also a competition against Acheron and possibly Kafka. Now, let me explain what I think Remembrance is going to be, and I actually had a tweet about this. In fact, let me see if I can pull it up. Okay, so Saint Vicious reached out to me on Twitter a couple days ago and basically asked how drastic of a change do I think summoning or the summon meta will be, right? Like summon characters coming into the meta. How drastically do I think they'll be? And would it completely outclass follow-up attacks, break, hyper carry, all the different archetypes, right? Because we've seen that happen with Super Break. Super Break came out and then boom, it started crushing everything just because of how easy it was to build, how cheap the characters were, so to speak, if you already had some of these things invested, which at that time, May was #1. There was like a 95.6% ownage rate for May specifically. So I think she was the second highest owned character in the entire game, or across all of Hoyoverse, from what the analytics could show based off Hoyo Labs. Now that might be a little different, but again, at that time, super easy. And then HMC was free, Gallagher was free. So you pretty much had a free team. The only thing you had to pull for was Firefly within that time period. Now we have follow-up attacks where it's like, even some of you guys, follow-up attack is one of those archetypes where if you weren't listening to someone like me, and I don't say that to like gas myself up, but I mean legit other creators or other players who were telling folks like, yo, get Topaz. Topaz is this. Yo, pick up Ratio. Follow-up attack is going to be this. You should pick up Robin. You should do this. You should have Ronnie at this point, whatever. All these different things that we were preparing for follow-up attack, and then boom, Facial drops out of nowhere. Also, Mosaic comes out of nowhere. March 7th comes out of nowhere. Like all these different things for follow-up attacks. So if you were already prepared for follow-up attacks, because that is the most expensive archetype as of right now, you are at the top of the top. Follow-up attacks are at the top of the top if you have Facial, right? Boom, so you're done. But what happens with Remembrance and the summon meta? We don't know anything about that. We have no idea how strong it's going to be, if it's even going to be a new archetype altogether, because I can't imagine having an entire team, right? Imagine having an entire team of 4 members or 3 members, 2 members, whatever, that could summon characters on your team. And then now you have 6 to 8 different characters that you can control on one team. At that point, I'm playing Bravely Default 2, and I don't know how to feel about that. So my opinion was this. I said, from a pure speculation, I believe the summons are going to be Hoyo's way of mixing multiple archetypes into one unit. Ergo, Summon X is going to have a focus on Super Break while using a follow-up attack after its Masters Break an enemy. And to further elaborate on that for just a visual example, imagine if you had, again, Herta, and Herta, whenever she does her kuru and she spins around after someone gets below 50% HP, take that same condition and apply it to the puppet. So yes, you can control the puppet or the servant, whatever it's going to be called, so that it can perform its own actions at will or at your will, but it also has its own talent built into the kit where, hey, did my master break an enemy? Okay, it did. All right, I'm going to punch the crap out of it and apply like 45% super break times their attack, whatever. Those are the type of things that I can see these summons doing in order to keep them not so much power creeping what we currently have, but I can see them doing that in a way so that we're more aligned with filling out the archetypes. Summon will add into the archetype is how I feel. I think there's going to be summon characters for follow-up attacks. I think there's going to be summon characters for super break. I think there's going to be summon characters for even hyper carry, and possibly summon will have its own meta as well. What I mean by that is like legit, look at Sunday, right? He advances these summons forward. So Lightning Lord, Numby, the Funyun Bunny from Linksha, things like that. Advancing all that stuff forward could apply to the summon itself. And because you can control the summon and the servant, or the master, right? The summon and the character, you're essentially advancing two different things at once. Now, if they made a Robin version of the summon, that'd be a little different. And then if they start making summons where like they're attached to the master, so when the master goes, the summon goes right after that, there's a crap ton of stuff they could do with summons, which is why I'm like, I don't think summon is going to just outright destroy the meta. And you can see me say that here. They won't necessarily change the meta in a drastic way as one whole path, but will more than likely present how the devs will shape up the future of the game. I even say I'd be more surprised if they didn't make summons that fit into each current archetype as a 5th character. And we've been talking about having 5th characters for a while now. So if we come over back to Aglaea, what I like about her outside of the lightning, outside of the remembrance, is that she's fighting for a dominant position. She could be a main DPS, she could be a sub DPS, she could be a support. There's no telling what we can do. And then the fact that I see 1, 2, 3 different puppets or servants, this reminds me of the marionettes, the bosses that we have, where each of them have their own thing. Now, if she can summon all 3 of them, hypothetically, and maybe let's say that she summons one for this thing, one for that thing, one for another thing, and they cycle out per skill. I don't know. There's a lot that you can do. There's tons of games that have summon mechanics in different RPGs that apply to this. Like I'm really trying to think of Final Fantasy X, right? You can summon what's her name? I was going to tell you Aerith, but Yuna can summon, right? She's a summoner, boom. So I want to summon Giant Dragon. All right. I want to summon Ifrit. There's Ifrit. All right. Okay. I don't want Ifrit anymore. I want to summon Leviathan. Boom. Leviathan comes out. And they all perform different things. So maybe she has that mechanic. I don't know. I don't think Star Rail is going to be able to do that, right? Like, I don't think they're that in depth with the game. I expect something way more in depth from Zenless, possibly even Wuthering to a degree. But I don't think Star Rail is going to get into that case where they would do something like that. But it's possible. It's definitely possible, because we're not getting 3 characters, right? Imagine 3 servants on the field at once. Hell no, we're not getting that. But she is new. This, like I said, is something that you have to consider, because if Remembrance MC, so RMC, is not as strong or dominant as HMC, that might lean towards, like how you treat Traveler in Genshin. You're probably not going to use a Nemo Traveler. Instead, you're going to go look for Kazuha or Sucrose or Venti, right? You're going to get the job done that way. Maybe RMC would fall into that same category, but it's still a free option for you to use until you get something else. Aglaea might just be that Remembrance DPS or even super support, right? I don't think she'll be a support. She doesn't look like it, but she might be the DPS that you're looking for, plus lightning. Usually what happens is whenever a character is releasing as a limited, that's what the enemy weaknesses are going to be. So I imagine lightning is going to have another resurgence. Boom, it's going to have its thing where lightning characters are more dominant. You're going to start seeing more Acheron teams pop up, comparisons between Acheron and Aglaea. Jingyuin is probably going to pop up on the banner. You're going to see more Jingyuins pop up and like, oh man, Jingyuin's so strong. He's tier 0 now, whatever. And then finally, we can talk about RMC, both forms of RMC. Really, the main issue with this and why I said you guys are going to get cucked earlier in the video is simply for the fact that you can't have both. You can't have HMC on one team and you can't have RMC on another team. So you have to make a decision between who you're going to use. In the event you decide, hey, I want to use RMC, well, guess what? The Super Break team that you might have invested into is no longer functional, because you can get away with not having Mei in your Super Break teams. We've shown that with Rappa, we've shown that with Boot Hill, we've shown that with even Firefly, like I said, with Asta. You don't really get away with that without HMC. Like, HMC is such a pivotal character to the Super Break comps that if you don't put that character on your team, you're doing not like at least 70 to 90% less damage than you would be doing without that character on the team. I'm making up that number, but I'm just trying to show you guys how drastic of a damage difference it is. Now, this isn't a big problem for players who were already investing into another archetype. So Acheron, follow-up attack, and then you might have dabbled in Super Break, or you skipped Super Break altogether. Now HMC is nowhere near as important for a player like you, and you can go ahead and invest in an RMC, use RMC for whatever they're going to be used for, which, might be summoning the fairy thing right there. I don't know, but you're going to use RMC along with whatever you're going to be doing for that team. It's a little bit of a double-edged sword, if you will, because on one hand, I'm gonna assume that you would build one of 2 of the strongest archetypes in the game, right? You're either gonna build in a follow-up attack because it's currently the strongest, or you're gonna build into Super Break because it previously was the strongest. archetype in the game. Not having one of those out of all the archetypes in the game, I can't imagine that there's a single player that's just not using both, right? Like that one player that's still using DOT and it's like, yo, DOT, that just is gonna come back, guys. Just you wait. DOT's on top, man. It's secretly #1. You're just not playing it right. I can't imagine that being somebody who comes into the comments. Please come in the comments and say that, just so I have like the one somebody that I can always reference and like, yo, this is the guy right here. All right, that's my boy. That's the DOT man. But all in all, that's where I'm about a lot of this stuff, right? I feel like if I were looking at this from my own free-to-play account, I'm like, dang, what do I do? I would have already invested in the Super Break. I more than likely would have picked up Rappa or even Boot Hill for that matter, but a lot of you guys have Firefly. Firefly and only Firefly puts you in the worst position possible for trying to manage around RMC. The reason that is because, like I said, Super Break. So if you can't use HMC, what else can you use? Your only option is to pull Fugue, which means you would have to skip Sunday, which might be directly linked to, at least as of right now, linked to a Harmony summon character, right? Our first summon centralized Harmony character. That's what I'm trying to say, which means you'll probably have to skip Sunday. Then you have to get Fugue, because if you don't get Fugue and you also want to play into the Remembrance path, you can't use HMC and you'd be forced to use RMC, or you have to pull Aglaea, who may not be dependent on RMC. We have no idea if RMC is going to be a support just like HMC is, for all we know. I don't know what RMC is going to be, bro. It's the morning time, dude. I haven't even drank coffee yet, so it is what it is. Anyhow, normally Remembrance is tied to preservation. Like if you look inside of it from Simulated Universe, a lot of the stuff from Remembrance is dealt with ice, so it usually leans towards preservation and, you know, stopping the enemy from doing something or doubling down, whatever. You're gonna have to pull Fugue. There's really no ifs, ands, or buts around that. Like if you want to play, if you've only been investing in Super Break and you want to invest into the summon meta, you have to pull Fugue or you have to pull Aglaea and Sunday. It's at a point now. That's why I said you guys are kind of cut. It's another situation similar like dang, this, you know what's funny? This just happened, I want to say back in like 2.1 or 2.2 when Acheron got around here. Acheron came around and then oh no, it was Kafka Swan. That's what it was. Whenever Swan got here, it was back when DOT was on a huge upcome, and you had May, you had Swan, and then you had Kafka coming on the rerun with somebody else right after that, something like that. So if you didn't pull Kafka back in like 1.4 or 1.3, whatever it was, then you had to grab May, who was right after that, and then you had to wait. If you didn't grab May, but you wanted to invest in DOT, you had no Harmony unit to really help you out besides maybe Asta. So you had to grab Kafka on a rerun, you had to grab Swan right then and there. You also needed to sustain. So you were looking at eventually into the time, like around the time that DOT was here. Like I said, when Swan got here, I think around like 2.1, this same exact situation happened for the players. The only difference was you guys didn't have an MC to depend on for free. So you had to make decisions on your pools. And they ended up getting, I don't want to say cucked back then, but it ended up being a little worse, because when they did decide to invest in a DOT, as soon as the DOT Swan got here, boom, and then they were like, yo, here's Acheron. It's like, ooh, what are you gonna do now, bro? You gonna invest in Acheron? You're gonna keep playing DOT? So it is what it is. But anyhow, that's enough rambling from me this morning. All right, guys, let me know your thoughts and opinions on all three characters. I am pretty excited about what's coming in 3.0. Like the last of 2. Whatever has just been a huge drag. It's not been good at all. But I think with the summon meta, there's another thing. I don't know if this is confirmed or not. I heard it around the block and I've seen it in the game. We were in stream the other day and a couple folks showed it to me. It's from Fei Xiao's boss fight, I believe. When you fight Fei Xiao, she has a front row and a back row. And then there's a boss fight, MOC, way back when with Argenti. Argenti summons 2 sets of shields, one in the front, one in the back, and he's in the back. That type of battlefield, I expect that to happen in 3.0. Usually what happens when the game does little implementations of things like that, I think they're testing stuff. The same way that I think Simulated Universe is a giant testing ground for different characters, kits, abilities, talents, whatever, right? I think we're gonna get double rows along with a 5th character, which would be, in this case, the summon. So I think they're trying to level up the game, so to speak, add a little bit more to it. And that could completely shake things up. Like that eliminates 0 cycles, that makes destruction characters and erudition characters. Erudition characters automatically become #1 if they start adding rows into the game, because they just clear boards like nobody's business. So there's so much that comes from them making a change like that it's like, I think it's worth its own video, but I need to know if it's confirmed or like if that's gonna be a thing before I even start rambling on about it. Anyway, that's gonna be it. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down below. I can't say my usual outro because it's inappropriate for YouTube. Smell you later.